Camping is meant to bring peace. A moment away from society where you can stare at a sky full of stars, breathe fresh air, and sit quietly by a fire while the sounds of the forest lull you to sleep. But the wilderness is wide, and in that dark silence, sometimes, something watches back. The stories you're about to hear are real. Turn off the lights, put in your headphones, and listen closely, because what you're about to hear might make you reconsider your next camping trip. You know something's wrong when the fire doesn't feel warm anymore. A couple of years ago, two lifelong friends, let's call them Jake and Tyler, decided to spend a weekend camping on a small island in the middle of a forgotten lake, somewhere deep in rural America. This wasn't their first rodeo. They had camped on that very island more than a dozen times. But this time was different. The place had history. A long decaying bridge, half sunk and crumbling into the lake, was the only way onto the island. According to old locals, the bridge was the site of a fatal car crash back in the 60s. But Jake and Tyler never gave the rumors much thought until that night. They set up their tent quickly before sunset, lit a fire, and sat back to enjoy the eerie silence of nature. By 11:30 p.m., the fire was crackling, their food was cooked, and the conversation drifted toward old ghost stories and urban legends, until something strange stopped them mid-sentence. 20 feet away from their campsite, two white lights appeared, side by side, moving gently up and down. At first, they assumed it was a late-night hiker, or maybe some other campers trying to mess with them. But something didn't sit right. These weren't flashlights. The glow was softer, more diffused, not beaming or directional like a flashlight would be. They were like floating orbs. Jake described them as almost having a presence, like they weren't being held by anything at all. Both men jumped to their feet. "Who's there?" Tyler shouted. Jake joined in, trying to sound tough. No response. Silence. Then the lights began to move, not just towards them, around them. Slowly circling the edge of their campsite in complete silence. The air felt heavy. The only sound was the crackle of the fire, now somehow feeling miles away. The lights glided through the darkness. They didn't sway like someone walking. They hovered. And then the impossible happened. The lights began gliding toward the edge of the water, then over it, smoothly, seamlessly, like they didn't even recognize that there should be resistance there. They moved across the surface of the lake, barely reflecting, and the entire time, the lights remained perfectly level, perfectly spaced, perfectly silent. There was no break in motion, no sign of human footsteps, no pause for breath, just motion. Jake and Tyler froze. Then Jake muttered something that Tyler later said chilled him more than the lights themselves. Those weren't lights, that was something watching us. Without another word, they tore down their tent, dosed the fire with lake water, and sprinted back across the broken bridge, barely caring that they could fall into the lake. They slept in Jake's trunk, miles away from the site, doors locked and weapons ready. To this day, they haven't gone back. Jake later posted their story on Reddit. Multiple commenters replied claiming to have seen similar orbs in remote camping areas. One commenter said this: "They are mysterious lights that are usually attached to a particular place." But to this day, no one has explained what those lights were, and if Jake and Tyler are lucky, they never will. Out in the remote countryside of the American Midwest, surrounded by miles of farmland and silence, sat a crumbling two-story farmhouse, weather-beaten, abandoned, and practically devoured by time. To most, it was just another relic of a forgotten past, but to the locals who had grown up nearby, it was something more, something eerie, something wrong. The house sat across from the family farmland where generations had been raised. One of the family members, an uncle in his late 40s, often visited the property with his girlfriend for a weekend retreat. One summer night, about 20 years ago, they decided to pitch a tent in a field just yards away from that house. The skies were clear, the fields quiet, and the only sounds were the usual chirping crickets and the occasional owl. As the couple drifted off to sleep inside their tent, sometime around 2 a.m., they were steered by something unmistakably out of place: the sound of children's laughter. High-pitched, joyful, yet completely out of context. The nearest neighbors were over a mile away and certainly didn't have kids young enough to be playing in the middle of the night, especially not out here with nothing around but tall grass, an empty road, and a decrepit house. The laughter got louder. Curious but cautious, the uncle slowly unzipped the tent flap and peeked out in the night. What he saw defied explanation. Just a few feet away, in the open field near the ruins of the old house, hovered a group of glowing orbs, small, pale blue in color, and flickering like lanterns in the dark. They were dotting around one another in tight loops, almost like they were dancing. As the uncle watched in stunned silence, the laughter continued, though now it was as if it was echoed from multiple directions at once. His girlfriend whispered frantically behind him, "What is that?" He stood up and without thinking, shouted, "Hey!" Instantly, the laughter stopped. Every orb froze mid-air. Then, in a flash, they shot off in different directions, one toward the forest, another one up toward the sky, and the rest dispersing like startled fireflies. Within seconds, they were gone. The field fell back into complete silence, and the air felt heavier, colder. The couple didn't sleep for the rest of the night. They stayed inside the tent, zipped up and shivering, unsure if what they saw was supernatural, a hallucination, or something else entirely. But one thing was clear, those lights weren't from this world. The next day, they scoured the area for any sign of what they have seen. There were no footprints, no evidence of children having played nearby, no campfire or toys, just trampled grass and an overwhelming feeling of unease. That field remained untouched ever since. No one in the family camps there anymore, and the house across the way, still abandoned, still standing, still watching. This was also posted on Reddit, and plenty of replies were posted under this story, with mostly everyone having the same experience. Could this be more than we think? 2014, late October, when the leaves back up and fall slips into winter's chill. That was the season for wild, impulsive decisions. It was on one such night that three friends loaded up a piece of junk van, bottles of beer, blankets, and smokes, heading to the banks of a nearby creek. They made camp under a dark sky, fire crackling, and cold dread still weeks away. The girlfriend, chilled in the cold, retreated to the van midnight and slept, or at least pretended to, while the two friends remained by the fire. Then the atmosphere shifted. No more laughs, no more music, not until the deep darkness across the creek cracked open with a horrifying voice. "Help me!" A woman's scream, raw and guttural, tore across the night air. Both had turned. The fire flickered, revealing two pale faces frozen in shock. Silence followed, dense and crushing. They flipped on their flashlights and called out. His phone rang seconds later. His girlfriend answered. He thought maybe she's stranded on the road, but her voice came calm from home. All was fine and terrifyingly normal. So who was screaming? They scanned the opposite bank. Not a soul. The woods stood still as a tomb. Moments dragged into eternity before it happened again. "Help me!" The cry, closer, trembling with desperation. No more than 100 yards away, flashlights pierced the darkness, chasing the voice. Jack scratched behind his ear. "Where are you?" he shouted. Nothing but his echoes in return. Finally, with instinct overriding reason, they woke the sleeping girlfriend, told her to start the van, and cooled their panic with every turn. But a new sound erupted from the back of the van, a direction opposite the creek. "Help me!" It sounded as if it came inches from their ears. Crates rattled, doors slammed. They rolled out of there fast, leaving the radio, beer, and the horrifying bitch behind, until only van lights remained in the rear view. Even now, the memories claw at them. Was it an animal? No other creatures sound like that. It wasn't a coyote, and certainly not a lion. No, it was something that didn't belong. And some nights, when the wind rustles the creek, they swear they still hear that distant plea for help echoing across the dark water. The forest doesn't care if you're afraid. The night doesn't care if you're alone. Out there, behind the firelight, Behind the safety of tents and sleeping bags, there are things watching, waiting, and sometimes they get close enough to be seen. So next time you pitch a tent and the woods fall silent, maybe ask yourself, is something watching?